The text landed at 6:12 a.m., hard and simple, as if it had been waiting for my eyes to open. "Don't come to the reunion. We're done." It was from my dad. No preamble, no justification. 1 minute I was in bed, holding that screen glow. In the blue hour, and the next, I was standing by the kitchen sink with the curtain pulled back just enough to watch the streak of sky over the maple. I stared at the words until the white noise in my head cleared. Then I typed one word. Understood. I set the phone on the window ledge and let it face down, as if that could muffle the echo. The house was quiet except for the rhythm of the old fridge compressor and the sparrows getting into their own arguments outside. There were dishes in the rack from last night, 1 pan, 2 plates, and a post-it note where I had written 3 numbers I needed to remember. 0512, 18750, 0603, 64300, 0627, 9200. I didn't delete the text. I didn't take a screenshot either. I went for a run and came back when the sky was already bright and the neighbors' sprinklers had started ticking. Calm is leverage. I'm the oldest daughter of Thomas and Linda Whitaker. For as long as I can remember, our family sport was work. We didn't hunt or fish. We built. When I was 10, I would sit at the shop on a stack of plywood sheets and watch my dad and the crew push boards through the planer until long curls of pine swam on the floor. He called the place Whitaker and Sons Millworks before he realized his sons were 1 son and 2 daughters who knew their way around a miter saw. He never sank the money into changing the signage. I did. After college, I came back with a CAD habit and the patience to listen to both a cabinet hinge and a client, which often requires the same kind of attention. I updated the software, standardized our bids, and moved us from a handshake ledger to a CRM that didn't forget. We grew. We added a CNC line and took on commercial jobs, libraries, hotel lobbies, a hospital wing desk that looked like a river frozen in maple. Last fall, we signed for a $1.8 million expansion. My dad pushed for speed. I asked for structure. The bank required a guarantor with a credit profile that calmed them down. My dad had assets, but enough scars to make underwriters flinch. I had a clean history, steady income, and cash reserves. We made a deal as a family. We would co-borrow, co-sign, and use the funds only for expansion expenses. We would not raise our voices in public or call each other names in the shop. We would review draws together. The loan agreement had a covenant for dual written consent on additional draws from the line of credit. My name was on the signature card. We all initialed a promise that any consulting over $5,000 would be pre-approved by me and by our accountant, Neil Foster, the last adult left in the room when everyone else wanted to be right. The reunion always happens in July at Maple Point Lake. White folding tables, watermelon, spans of talk that drift from weddings to cedar siding. The joke was that we built what other people would gather beneath, and then we gathered under borrowed shade. In family mythology, reunions are the proof we are fine together. This year, apparently, the proof had been canceled. Or at least my part of it had. The text is not the story, it's just the curtain. 2 weeks before that 6:12 a.m. message, small things started to wobble. A new password on the shared drive that no one told me about. A purchasing order I did not see until after our vendor called to confirm and asked why the delivery address had changed. A Slack thread where my name didn't appear in a conversation that would have been my job to lead. I asked Caleb, my brother who runs the floor, if he had reset the QuickBooks permissions. He said no, but he looked away when I asked. Dad wants us to move faster, he said. He says you're slowing us down with all the approvals. Approvals are not brakes, I said. They are seatbelts. The next day, I tried to sign into the bank portal and watched the cursor spin until the screen told me my access was denied. I screenshot that. I walked down to the shop that afternoon to ask about it, and instead of the whine of the planer, I heard murmurs stop as I came in. Dad was at the office door with 2 men I didn't know. He closed the door behind him and put his hands in his pockets, as if they might have done something he didn't want me to see. You're not needed in this one, Elise, he said. It's a company men thing. You get to focus on design finally. Isn't that what you want? Company men. I watched Caleb shift his weight. Our cousin Jenna looked at me and away as if her eyes might burn if they stayed too long. When the door closed again, I went home and pulled up the AP ledger for the past 8 weeks from the last downloaded copy I had on my laptop. 3 invoices made me stop and sit up straighter. 0512, Graham Strategic LLC, Consulting Market Positioning, $18,750. 0603, Northline Rentals, CNC Equipment Rental, Emergency, $64,300. 0627, Blue Oak Marketing, Pre-Launch Market Research, $9,200. I had never heard of Graham Strategic LLC. Our CNC line was not and had never been rented. We owned it, paid cash after a good year, something my dad liked to tell clients when he wanted them to imagine solidity. And I had already signed off on a comprehensive marketing plan for the expansion with a firm we knew. The dates lined up with the week my bank access went dark. I printed the invoices, laid them on the table, and stared until the numbers began to separate from the feelings about the people who had generated them. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the documents. Dad's text about the reunion made sense in that light. My mother's silence made sense too. Noel, my aunt, sent me a message in the family thread saying, "We love you both," as if I had been caught in a romantic breakup with my father. I closed the lid on the laptop and picked up my phone and called Maya Ortiz, whose card I had put in my wallet after a seminar on small business banking I'd sat through on a rainy March Monday. Those free cupcakes ended up paying for themselves. We met the next morning in a booth at a diner that smelled like coffee and old vinyl. I slid the invoices across to her, then the last copy of the loan agreement, the promissory note, and the signature card. Maya read like someone who had learned to see the room while also seeing the page. She asked quiet questions about timing, about who had access to the portal, about whether I had given written consent for any draws after May. I had not. She tapped the covenant with her pen. Dual written consent, also this line. Material. Misrepresentation will trigger review and may suspend draws pending cure. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. You didn't choose their behavior. You did choose to build the mechanism to hold it. I don't want to burn it down, I said. It's my family. Then don't light a match, she said. Move a brick and let the wall fall. What brick? Your consent. Your signature. Your calm. You can send notice that you're not consenting to any additional draws, that your access has been revoked contrary to the governing documents, and that you request the bank review the recent disbursements against approved use. Frame it as your own experience and your obligation to accuracy. The institution will do the rest, because that's what institutions do when you give them a clean reason to do it. Move the brick and let the wall fall. I spent the afternoon assembling a binder. The front page was a letter I wrote and signed. Notice of revocation of consent and request for review. I stated simply that I had been removed from the bank portal without my knowledge or any governing board action I had been made aware of. I listed the 3 invoices with vendors I did not recognize or contradicting facts, attached the last approved budget version with my initials, and included printed copies of emails showing I had requested access and been ignored. I added a copy of the signature card and highlighted the clause that required both my dad and me to sign for any new draw. I wrote that I was not consenting to any further draw requests until access was restored, and the bank confirmed that funds had been used in line with the loan's purpose. I also signed a form to remove myself as an authorized signer on the operating account, different from being a co-borrower, because in my experience, the fewer places my name lived where I didn't control the door, the fewer fires I had to watch. The next morning, I wore a navy dress and flats and drove to the bank a half hour before the branch lobby opened, so I could sit in the car and let my pulse level. I've learned that confidence looks a lot like slowness. Rachel Kim, a vice president who had smiled through our closing 6 months earlier, came out to the lobby precisely at opening and waved me back to her office. I put the binder on her desk the way I used to put completed projects on the shop table for my dad, squared edges, nothing sticky or wrinkled. I spoke as if I were telling her the measurements for a custom cabinet. I'm not consenting to any additional draws, I said. I was removed from the portal without discussion. 3 invoices raise questions. I believe we're out of bounds on the approved budget. I need you to review this. She read the letter. Do you have emails showing you requested access and were denied? Yes. I slid the printouts forward. And you haven't signed any new draw requests? No. She turned to her screen. I see a draw submitted June 29th. Only one signature. She kept her face neutral in a way I respect and used to try to replicate when clients didn't know what they wanted and blamed the wood. I'm going to put a hold on further disbursements while we review this, she said. We may need a meeting with all parties. I nodded. I'm also removing myself as an authorized signer on the operating account, I said. I don't want to be tied to transactions I can't see. She had me sign a form. I did not say this would save me. I didn't say anything like that. I'm not a lawyer, and this wasn't a movie. It was a Thursday morning, and I was a woman with a binder, choosing to describe what was true and letting gears turn. I chose the page over the stage. The wall didn't fall in a crash. It leaned, groaned, and then made a sound you can't hear unless you're quiet. My phone began to buzz before I'd even left the parking lot. By the time I was back at my kitchen table, I had 117 notifications. Slack pings. 2 emails marked urgent with the subject, "Why did you do that?" A WhatsApp message from my Aunt Noel. "Honey, this is not the way." 29 missed. Calls lit my phone like a polite siren. The first voicemail was Neil, the accountant, speaking too fast. "Elise, I just got a call from the bank. Please call me. We need to clarify the dual consent clause. I'm trying to pull the board minutes and..." He swallowed and started over. "Call me, okay? I'm on your side. We just need to line it up." Texts started coming in a spray of contradictions. From Dad. "You think this is funny?" And then, "You always were dramatic." And then, 2 hours later, "We can fix this. Come talk like an adult." From Caleb. "I didn't know about the invoices." And then, 10 minutes later, "You didn't have to go nuclear." Nuclear. As if a letter to a bank is the same as dropping something that burns everything. As if silence is the only nonviolent option. From my mother. Nothing. Then, much later that night, "Are you okay?" Silence is not surrender. It is a strategy. Rachel scheduled a meeting for Monday in a small glass room at the bank. My stomach had the low shake that feels like you've had too much coffee, even when you haven't. Maya sat next to me at the table, a pen still in her fingers but capped now, and told me once, and then again, with a look rather than words, that the best thing I could do was to keep sounding like myself. Dad came in, with a quick smile that looked like it was stapled to his face. He wore his good boots, the ones he only wore to weddings and closings. Caleb followed with his jaw tight, and my mother had on a soft sweater, although it was too warm for one. Neil sat down with a leather folio he never let out of his reach. Rachel started, flat and formal, and asked whether everyone was aware of the dual consent requirement for additional draws. Dad said he was. "We're a family," he said. "We talk. We don't make it procedural." Rachel glanced at me. I nodded once. She slid the June 29th draw across the table. One signature. Dad didn't look at it. He looked at me. "You're trying to embarrass me." "I'm trying to use the agreement we all signed," I said. My voice surprised me. Low, even. Carrying. "And there are 3 invoices I need to understand." I put the copies down in a line. "Graham Strategic, LLC," I said, tapping the first. "Who is that?" "Friend of mine," Dad said. He advised for $18,750. I asked. "It's normal," he said. "It wasn't in the budget," I said. "Budget's flex," he said. "The CNC rental," I said, tapping the second. "We don't rent our CNC," Caleb exhaled. "We had downtime and the vendor said..." "The vendor?" I said. "Which vendor?" "The guy," he said. "Look, can we not do this in front of them?" Them, the bank, the people with the leverage we had asked for and now pretended to be above. "The marketing research," I said, tapping the third. "I approved a plan in April. Who is Blue Oak Marketing?" Dad's jaw tightened. "You're asking questions like a cop," he said. "I'm asking questions like someone whose name is on the line," I said. Neil cleared his throat. "We need to reconcile these," he said. "There are no corresponding board minutes for these disbursements. The bank will require..." "We don't need board minutes," Dad said, the smile gone. "We're not that kind of..." Rachel held up her hand without raising it. The loan documents require dual consent, she said. In their absence, and given a question about use of proceeds, we will maintain the hold pending a review. We'll need documentation and possibly an independent audit, depending on what we find. The goal is to get back to compliance. Dad looked at me as if I had climbed up on a table at a wedding and announced something obscene. You are doing this to us, he said. Your own family. I didn't draw the money, I said. I didn't remove my own access. I didn't hire your friend for $18,150. I didn't rent a machine we own. I didn't bring a new marketing firm into a plan without telling anyone. He stared at me. Then, in a tone I had heard only once before, on the day the bank called him about a different loan 10 years ago, when the recession was something we couldn't name yet, he said, "Please." It didn't feel like victory. It felt like gravity. Returning. I looked at him and saw the man who taught me to angle a chisel and the man who had taught himself to be afraid of paperwork because it didn't let him be charming. I did not let my face soften. I kept my hands flat on the table. I need 3 things, I said. A written plan to cure. My equity buyout, $120,000, paid from funds not tied to this expansion. And when the bank is satisfied and the loan is restructured, a letter releasing me from the guarantee. I will not consent to any draw until then. Caleb looked at Dad. My mother smoothed the cuff of her sweater where a loose thread had frayed and knotted without meaning to. The way muscle. Memory agrees before the brain knows. Neil circled something in his notebook. Rachel made a small note and then another. Maya did not touch me, didn't nudge my hand, didn't do anything except sit like a witness with a pulse. We'll talk as a family, Dad said. You already did, I said, when you changed the passwords. Calm doesn't mean weak. The Maple Point Chronicle ran a 3-paragraph piece on Wednesday. Local builder suspends draws amid internal review. Bank says goal is compliance. There was no photo. There were no quotes. It was the kind of blurb you skim if you're not in it and memorize if you are. Dad stopped texting. Caleb sent one message that said simply, I'm sorry. My mother sent 2. Your aunt says hello. And the next day, it's cooler at the lake today. I went to the shop once to gather the few things I had there and found the door locked. The sign on the glass said, closed for inventory. Through the blinds, I could see the light falling across the floor where sawdust used to drift like pollen. I stood there longer than I meant to, then went home to pack a box in my own hallway and label it Shop, Misk. I slid the binder onto my bookshelf between 2 cookbooks I never use. There's nothing cinematic about resetting your life. It looks like calling the utilities and saying your name slowly. It looks like forwarding your mail and correcting the misspelling of your street because somehow they got the T and the H reversed and it became straight instead of street, as if the whole thing were a puzzle turned around. It looks like walking to the farmer's market on Saturday morning as if you don't have a factory in your bones. It looks like waiting. On August 28th, an email arrived from Rachel with a PDF attached. Release of guarantee, Elise Whitaker. The Irish letter was 4 paragraphs in bank language that never enjoys itself. It said the bank had completed a review. Funds used for purposes outside the approved scope had been reclassified and covered by additional collateral. The loan had been restructured. My guarantee had been released. I had 0 remaining obligation. 0 is a number you feel more than read. I printed the letter and stared at the last line until my eyes watered from the angle I held them. The next day, a certified envelope arrived with a cashier's check for $120,000 and a short note from Neil. Per agreement, your equity buyout. I hope you are well. The return address was the shop, but the handwriting was Neil's careful block letters. I held the envelope for a long minute before I slit it with a butter knife because it was closest. The paper inside felt heavy in a way that made me think about all the ways paper carries weight, the good kind and the kind that makes you stoop. Quiet facts outlast loud feelings. The reunion happened without me. I saw a photo on Noel's Facebook page of the folding tables, watermelon, and a baby I don't know being held up like a new flag. Someone had captioned it, "Family is everything," a phrase I've learned to translate as, "Family is what we behave like." I closed the app and went for a walk around the lake in the late afternoon. It was the first time I had walked Maple Point in July without my family filling every bench and patch of shade. The water had that indifferent shine that makes you both bigger and smaller at once. I sat on the old dock where the boards are so weathered the splinters learned manners. I held my phone and scrolled back to the 6:12 a.m. text. Don't come to the reunion. We're done. I kept it not because I wanted to rehearse hurt, but because I wanted to remember what clarity feels like when it's uninvited and correct. My reply sat beneath, a single line, a small thing that looked like a whisper. Understood. I've learned that calm is not what you feel. It's what you reach for in the pocket of your coat when the room fills with smoke. Calm is the document you print. Calm is the pause before you answer. Calm is a letter from a bank that says what your body knew first. I didn't win. There was nothing to win. I stepped out of a hallway where the lights flickered and into a room I could see in. If you want me to make it heroic, I can't. If you want me to make it messy, I don't need to. It was. There are days when I miss the sound of the planer so much I think I hear it in the refrigerator. There are moments when I imagine opening the shop with Caleb in a clean version of our life where we both breathe the same air without counting. There are nights when I dream about the cabinet that looked like a river and wake with my fingers making the shape of the curve. Then I make coffee. Then I send an email for a new project that is mine. Then I put the release letter back in the drawer where it belongs, under the stamps. Move one brick. Let the wall fall. Dad texted me once in September. We have work if you want it. I stared at the words and saw more than they said. I replied, thank you. No. It wasn't a declaration. It was a description of what I could hold, what I could put down. On a Sunday, when the air bent toward fall, I sat with Maya on a bench at the park and told her I was thinking about starting a smaller shop. She said, you'll need a space. That knows how to listen. I laughed because I knew she meant a lease, but I also heard the other meaning. She asked if I wanted her to look at the paperwork when I found a place. I said yes. We ate apples that were too tart and pretended to like them until we didn't have to. I still get the Maple Point Chronicle in my inbox. A month after the release, letter of follow-up appeared. Whitaker and Sons completes internal review. No details. A quote from Dad that said, we are focused on the work. I hope that's true. I hope the work returns to its rightful position. The thing you do, not the person you love instead of loving the person you love. On my fridge, held by a magnet shaped like a tiny trowel, is a slip of paper where I wrote something that has become my favorite blueprint. I am the adult in the room. It isn't a threat. It isn't a boast. It's a reminder that, when the voices are loud, being adult looks like letting the paper speak. I didn't burn it down. I turned on the light. People like to talk about breaking cycles as if you're swinging a hammer. Maybe sometimes. You are. But mostly, in my experience, you live a different day and then another. You answer a text with one word and let it echo into a letter and a meeting and a doc where the splinters have had time to learn manners. You don't come to the reunion and the world doesn't tilt off its axis. You're still here. I kept the first text. I kept my reply. And I free my own hands by keeping my name where my eyes can see it. He texted, don't come. I replied, understood. And now, in a room with good light, I'm not invisible anymore, to them or to myself. Pull quotes. Calm is leverage. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the documents. The text is not the story, it's just the curtain. Move the brick and let the wall fall. I chose the page over the stage. Silence is not surrender, it is a strategy. Quiet facts outlast loud feelings. I didn't burn it down, I turned on the light.